Good evening, everybody. My name is Michael Landry, and I'm the executive director of Camp Harrison at Herring Ridge. We're up in Wilkes County, North Carolina, and we're a 2,100 acre YMCA camp. And tonight, looking forward to a conversation on picking out a camp for your child here with Crystal.
Awesome. My name is Crystal Little. I'm the executive director at YMCA Camp Thunderbird in Lake Wylie, South Carolina, which is right outside of Charlotte. And so I think that's my introduction right there.
I
All
think
right,
we're good to
so
roll. Yeah.
yeah, how to choose the right overnight camp for your child. I think the first big thing that comes to mind for me is typically when families are looking at an overnight camp experience, they are looking for something that will end up being a multi-year experience. I think most families look at overnight camp as, they want to find somewhere that's the right fit, and then it's somewhere their child can grow over time, summer to summer, year to year. So I don't know, that's like the first thing that pops in my mind when it comes to the choice. Anything for you that's just like,
Yeah, I
I don't
mean,
know,
no, I
jumps
think
out?
you're right. It is a little bit different than day camp or some other programs where you may rotate a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So I think sometimes that creates a feeling of pressure. The flip side of that is sometimes you just don't know till you try it, and we've seen
Right.
that either of families who've tried our camp and it hasn't been exactly what they're looking for, or we've had families come to us from another camp that they had tried for a year and then stay
Mm-hmm.
with us a long time. So once family gets past that, there's so much to look into. But I think
Mm-hmm.
first I end up getting super practical. And so it's just logistics.
Yeah.
You know, what's the camp schedule looks like in terms of either school. I know for a lot of the older kids, getting into sports becomes a challenge, family vacations.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on the camp, their session lengths and how they do it. I think it's more common with some of the smaller Christian camps, but some camps actually run different sessions for different ages throughout the summer.
Right.
That can be could be a great fit, but if you've got multiple kids, you may want them all at camp at the same week so you're
Right.
not playing that Rubik's Cube.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think the overall camp schedule, when are they offering sessions? And then the next biggest one is probably session length and budget, and those two usually go hand in hand. A longer
Mm-hmm.
camp's going to cost more, but I know y'all run a little bit longer of a traditional session than we do. You want to talk a little bit more about those session lengths and how they come into factor?
Sure. So, I mean, it really is different depending on the camp. We've got camps like Camp Harrison, where kind of the primary session is a 1 week. And you do have families who tie them together to create multi-week
Right.
occasionally, but you're looking at majority of campers doing 1 week at a time. And then with Thunderbird, what I'd call our like signature session is a 2 week. And for us, that means we schedule a 2 week session followed by a 2 week session followed by a 2 week session. And we do have like some junior 1 week options, and some families um, do two-week sessions to make a 4 week session. And so there's some flexibility in the schedules you and I have at camp. But there are other camps, like the one where I started my career. Their sessions were, and it's still like this to this day. They start the summer with a 3 week session, and then they have a 4 week session, and then they have a 2 week session. That's it.
Yep.
We've got some, there are some YMCA camps that are just 2 4 week sessions. I know especially in New England, it's really traditional to have one 7 week session, and that is the whole
The
summer
whole
for
summer.
the camp and the kids, right? So it's so different regionally and depending on the type of camp and what you're looking for. But I think you're exactly right when it comes to starting with the logistical. considerations, right? If you know your budget, if you know your school calendar, if you have family vacations that are already booked, right? If there are things like that that you already know, that's gonna start your process. It'll automatically eliminate some options that are out there. So I think that's wise advice.
You
Um,
know, another
yeah.
factor that I think plays into that I've noticed, it's interesting because it almost moves exactly geographically, but the farther north you go, the later the summer starts and the longer it runs, even if they're doing
Hmm.
1 week sessions. And
Hmm.
then the further south, it changes. And I know for a
Right.
while our camps were even a week off. But then if you go down into Georgia and Alabama, they may even start Memorial Day weekend.
Right.
And so for families who maybe are in private school or homeschool, if you're needing earlier or later sessions, sometimes a move in geography can help with that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's an interesting game to play for those of us who kind of live in the middle.
Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. Well, so I think that's an answer families got to come up on their own. You got to figure out
Oh,
your
for sure.
logistics.
Oh,
Once
hold
you,
on. Let
yep,
me
yep.
mention one more. Sorry, it just came to
No, that's
mind.
good.
When we're talking about logistics, this isn't really a logistic, but it is, I think, a primary factor in narrowing down your options is if your child has any type of specific need
Mm,
that maybe wouldn't be commonly accommodated at, your, what I'll say, your average camp. But that could be your child has a specific need and you need to find a camp tailored to that or that who can accommodate that safely. Or if your child has a need that maybe you're wanting them to help you're wanting them to find a community of
yeah.
other kids who are similar, right? And one of the immediate things that pops into mind, though there are many examples, is there's so many camps out there designed for kids who have type 1 diabetes. And so, like, I know at Thunderbird and I know at Harrison, we happily accept campers who have type 1 diabetes, and we've got the infrastructure to help them manage and stay safe. But there are many camps that are specifically designed for kids who have type 1 diabetes, and that can be a great place for kids to find a network of kids who are going through really similar life experiences.
No, I think that's a great call out. When I was at another camp, we hosted in partnership with the Children's Hospital a
Hmm.
diabetes camp for a week, and it was so cool to see because a lot of those kids were had been diagnosed within the last year or two, and all of a
Hmm.
sudden, the fact that everyone's checking their blood sugar, everyone is dealing with this thing was huge. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
I think it goes both ways. Like you were saying, I think camps have gotten better on a whole. We can accommodate a lot of needs.
Hmm.
Um, but sometimes there is something great about going and being around and not being the only one.
Yes.
And so that may be something to dig into and look for.
Hmm.
I feel like for a lot of those, and I may be wrong, I don't know camps that necessarily specialize in that as much as they partner with another agency. And so if you're looking for, especially around medical needs, you may check
Hmm.
with your family advocacy groups or with your local children's hospital. And they may be able to point you in the direction of an organization that hosts it because we host a few of those. We do
Hmm.
one with the Down Syndrome Association of Charlotte, which is really cool. And I know y'all work with some groups too, so you may reach
Hmm.
out to some of those organizations to find a good fit.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of opportunities out there if you're looking for something niche, or to to really cater to a need or even life experience that your child's going through, like even grief camps, right? There's
Uh,
so many
is
different
it is it
opportunities.
Camp Kesem? I think that's run by
Mm.
college students at different camps for kids whose families have had a family member's had cancer,
Hmm.
and the kids haven't, but they get to come together around that shared experience.
Yeah, those programs can be so impactful for kids who maybe just aren't surrounded by others going through the same stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. All
Well, I
right.
think
I interrupted
that
you, so
no, you're good. I think that actually, so that was a great bridge because I think that takes us from the logistics into really digging deep into the program considerations. I know we had talked
Mhm.
about on one of our other calls, and this is pretty pervasive in terms of a mindset through the camp industry of, every kid would benefit from going to camp, but any one camp is not right for every kid, but there is
Absolutely.
a good one out there. And so,
Hmm.
what are some of the different considerations outside of like, oh, they've got a blob and they've got a zip line? What are some of the program considerations parents may want to dig into?
I think one of the first things I think of is like the environment in a sense that like do you feel like your child would enjoy a traditional camp, right? Like lots of time outside, a variety of different activities, just kind of getting to explore a whole lot of different things, staying busy the whole day. Or does your child hate the outdoors? And so And so actually like finding a coding camp or something like that would be right up their alley. And you need to think about it environmentally that way. Um, Thinking about it, whether your child, if you know, right? Because some kids, we just don't know this yet. Do they thrive in a really busy environment, a really big environment, or do they do better with like a more intimate setting? So looking at camp size and the environment that way. Um, and then just thinking about special interests, right? Or areas where they want to excel. I remember growing up, I was a competitive swimmer. And there were competitive swimming camps at universities, and that was always something my family considered for the skill development, right? And so
Yeah.
there are those types of camps, like the options are just so vast. So I think, yeah, first kind of thinking about what would your child like in terms of a specific focus versus variety and environment. If they hate the beach, or if they hate sand, don't send them to a camp
The
at the
beach
beach.
camp.
Right. Yeah.
Well, then I think with the activities that, man, I have this weird interaction with our activities because it's always a thing like we feature on the website because it's cool. And
Hmm.
it is such a big part of the kid's day. But, like a lot of camps, we see it as a tool just to help with relationship and all these other
Oh yeah.
skills. But for 9, 10, 11-year old, like activities are a big part of the day. And not just what activities, but how they're run. And
Hmm.
so, like I know for Harrison, we let our kids pick their activity each day at in
Hmm.
real time. That we have philosophical reasons for doing that, but what we sacrifice is what your kid's not doing is spending 6 days in a row growing a deep skill set. And we
Right.
give that up for some other benefits. Where I know some camps that run longer sessions, there's some, especially some of those doing like those 4 and 6 week, like you go
Hmm.
pick a specialty and you get to dive deep. And some kids really like that. And then I know there's other camps that actually they just rotate around by cabin and they
Right.
they even give up the choice and the dive for the relationship side. So
Hmm.
I think asking some questions about that structure and not just like asking how you do it, but asking why. Because I think a lot of
Hmm.
camps can really speak to what their philosophy is on why they've made that decision. And that may
Hmm.
give you some insights on where your child's going to thrive best.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think every camp has their own philosophy in different aspects of camping, and none of them are wrong. It's right, they're best for certain types of kids or certain types of experiences. You also have, like, aside from the activities, you also have camps that are like they've got a very competitive
Yeah.
atmosphere, right? Versus others that are challenged by choice, right? It's more focused on the individual experience and their comfort zone and their growth just in their own world. There are some that are, very instructional and kind of targeted, like you were saying, like a designated type of flow to the day. And others that are like much more almost Montessori style, right? Like very exploratory and and child choice and flexible. So there's there's no wrong way. It's whatever fits your child best.
Yeah, and we've seen that. I think y'all have too. Like we'll have one sibling come to Harrison and another sibling go to a different camp
Hmm.
because the parents have figured out and I think that's the hardest thing. I know as a parent, that's one of the things my wife and I talk about trying to figure out is that push and pull between when do we need to have our kids in a uncomfortable, what may feel uncomfortable so they can grow
Hmm.
versus when do we need them somewhere that they're just going to thrive. And
Right.
I think that's a question for families to have. And if the child's old enough to have with the camper as well, to
Hmm.
consider where what they need. And because we've seen both ways. We've seen kids who camps out of their comfort zone, and by the end of the week, they've had all this growth. We've seen other kids who come to the same camp where camp is their reset button
Hmm.
from the rest of their year, where it's like, this is the place I don't feel pressure. And what's so ironic, it's the same program, right? So for one
Hmm.
kid, it's this push and this pressure, and for the other kid, it's this, oh, I can relax and I'm home. And we
Yes.
can't answer that. That's something that
Mhm.
parents and families have to figure out.
I agree. I think is in terms of youth development in general, I think we can acknowledge that having kids in an uncomfortable place, situation, unfamiliar, or what I would call like their stretch zone, right
Yeah.
outside of their comfort zone, right? Like finding that opportunity for kids is really important when it comes to their growth just throughout their years of development. But you make an excellent point that some kids are experiencing that all school year
Yeah.
and for one reason or another. And so camp, finding something where they fall really easily into place and it just is, it's going to be very natural for them, might be beneficial. Where if the rest of the school year feels natural and easy for your child, seeking a little bit of that stretch may be great for the summertime.
You just remind me of something we've had conversations with this, and this may be a good tip for parents. If the school year has already been that stretch, and especially for like our fifth to eighth graders, some of them are really struggling socially. You need to find out where a lot of the kids from that school are going to camp.
Mm,
And you may not want to go to that. That may factor into it as well. Because
yeah.
we've seen that both ways. We've seen it where kids come here because great, I don't know anybody. And we've had parents where kids had some struggles and they're like, I know you got to protect confidentiality, but can you tell me if I come this week that my kid's not going to be around these three people? It's just been a rough year. And so that
Hmm.
may be something good for parents to dig into as well.
Yeah. The most magical thing about camp for me is that I think it allows kids to be 110% themselves, right? They're not trying to live up to expectations of others or be someone to fit into this specific box, which so often happens in like a school community and things like that. And they just get to find themselves, settle into their own skin um and just be just themselves. And that's a really interesting thing to bring up about how sometimes it can be advantageous to be in a totally new community for that experience. Hmm.
Well, yeah, and that probably just ties into the other things program wise to kind of wrap that is, I mean,
Yeah.
families need to really think about what's important for them. Are you looking for a camp that's going to build up a particular religious tradition or
Hmm.
affiliation? Are you wanting an all boys camp, an all girls camp? Are there, is there a certain community that you want your kids tied around? And
Hmm.
I feel like in the last 10, 15 years, I mean, there's been continued growth in, I mean, you could find the most niche thing. You could be looking for 8 to 10-year-old girls who want a wilderness backpacking camp in a certain state with primitive skills, and you can
Hmm.
probably go find that. And so,
Right.
um, but knowing what that is, we run into that sometimes at Harrison. We're compared to other camps, we have a more of a Christian emphasis, and
Hmm.
um, we're very upfront about it because we want families to get a good camp. And the hiccups we run into, sometimes families had experience at another Y camp and come to us and like, this isn't what we're looking for. I'm like, oh,
Right.
I don't want you to not find what you're looking for, but so you need to ask what those are. And sometimes it's tricky because I know sometimes I don't know till I run into it, and then I'm like, oh yeah, no,
Hmm.
that's not what I was looking for.
Right. I mean, you and I, we work in the same association, and our camps are very different.
Oh yeah.
Where yours has a really like kind of primary integrated, intimate focus and practice with Christianity. We're still part of the YMCA, and Christian principles and practices are a big part of camp. But I get this question actually all the time. Like how does it incorporate into camp? And for us, we are much more character focused and actually have a very diverse religious community at our camp, right? We've got actually a really large Jewish population that comes to
Yeah.
us. And we make it a point to make sure everyone can feel included in the different elements and nobody feels forced to join in the community prayer before breakfast or whatever it is. So, even us, we're part of the same organization and it's very different how we operate our camps.
It is. I mean, I think too, on so many levels, right? Because even activity wise,
Hmm.
we've got a lot of the same activities. And correct me if I'm wrong, but like from what I've been at Thunderbird, there's just this super high energy level, and it feels like it is go from morning to evening, wide open, which is
Hmm.
awesome for the kids, and they love it. Where Harrison, I mean, we're having a lot of fun. We've got energy, but we also just have more of that philosophy. You were talking about almost a Montessori school of like,
Hmm.
we're going to prioritize relationship over even activity. And so
Hmm.
sometimes that may mean we sit at the creek and hang out and chat. And
Yeah.
I laugh because I know of a couple families where we've got one kid at Harrison and one at Thunderbird, and
Yep.
they each thrive in that. And I think it's so cool that the parents are that in tune to
Hmm.
where their kids are really going to thrive, that they make the effort of doing check-in day 2 hours apart on the same
Yes.
day to get their kiddos into that environment where they know they're going to do well.
Yeah, I love that. And that makes me think a lot about, some camps, especially camps that have been around for a while, they've got a lot of legacy families, right? So if someone grows up going to that camp absolutely loving it, then there's a really high likelihood when and if they have a child that grows up to be camper age, then they very well may be looking at, oh, I want to send my kid back to that camp where I grew up going. And I think that's awesome. And my family, like my kid goes to two camps because we have our camp that we consider our legacy camp, and I'm at Thunderbird and he loves Thunderbird, so he does Thunderbird too. But I do think it's important. There are occasions when the apple does fall far from the tree and the kids' interests and energy and social needs may be different than parents. And so having the insight to recognize when what you want or what you love is not necessarily what your child would want or love, I think that can be hard sometimes,
Yeah.
but it is important to think that through.
Well, that I mean, you're spot on because sometimes those things that made it thrive for the parent is just not for the kid.
Hmm.
That also reminded me another dynamic we've seen pop up sometimes, especially if there's a little bit more of an age gap in kids. If one child started at a camp, and especially if they've been like a teen camper and they've gotten on staff, sometimes it's hard for the younger camper to or sibling to step out from behind their sibling shadow.
Right.
Um, all of a sudden you're so and so's little brother or so and so's little sister or your junior so and so.
Hmm.
And so that may be another factor. That's actually something we saw. I've got my two oldest girls are about 2.5, 3 years apart.
Hmm.
And the first year we had them in the same cabin. And then since then we've intentionally put them separate because my second oldest has a totally different personality when her older sister's not there
Yeah.
overshadowing her.
Hmm.
And if it wasn't enough just to move cabins, we'd have to look at doing different weeks or doing different camps because it's so cool seeing her thrive in that way. And so that's just one other little wrinkle in there for families.
Yep. Yeah. Deciding whether siblings together or siblings separate is best for those siblings. That totally depends on the family.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, so we've worked through a lot of this. You made a comment when we started. A lot of families are for overnight camp. You're planning ahead, and then some are planning way ahead of like, okay, can this be a camp that can grow with my child? If we start at
Hmm.
8, or they still want to go at 12, 13, 14. So thinking of those older kids, because the first couple years, in my opinion, if the first year is critical. It's got to be a good fit. They've got to have a positive experience.
Hmm.
After that, they're ready to roll. They're going to keep coming. They're lifers, but not uncommon. You hit 12, you hit 13, new interests kick in. Or if a child started, at 6 or at 7, they hit that and they're like, I've kind of done everything. So
Hmm.
what are some things families may want to look for to have that longevity going into the older years where their kid's going to keep having new experiences?
Yeah, I think, maybe the best question for that, or the best thing to look at, like if you're just exploring websites or something like that, is either how does the experience change as my child gets older? One of the things that I think of right away is so many camps have different traditions that are like built into that age group, right? And it's almost like you start camp, let's say the age group is called the juniors, right? And you have your own traditions. And you know that the middlers have their own traditions, but you actually don't really know what they are until you get to be a middler. Like those are some things that really can kind of keep kids interested going back year over year. Or there can be different privileges, opportunities that open up as kids get older through camp. And then other things to look for or ask about, especially if they're important to you, is there are camps that have skill building tracks that are like year over year, right? So you're looking at, okay, I'm going to go this summer and where I'm going to work through these skills, right? And kind of wherever I land, that's my starting point the next summer, right?
Yeah.
So it's year over year, you're kind of building on it instead of repeating the same curriculum or activity plans year over year. And
Yep.
then the other thing, I think a lot of camps have this built into their infrastructure is leadership development, especially when you start thinking of that like camper to counselor pipeline.
Yep.
And so inquiring or learning the details about those opportunities could be huge too.
Well, and I think if you, as you're looking into that, um, that may circle back to the practical side too, because I know for some camps, as you get older, either you've got to go for longer sessions or that leadership track may have a different price point. And
Hmm.
so if you're trying to find somewhere, and it depends. Some camps like, hey, for Harrison, we say, hey, you can keep doing 1 week sessions till you're done. We offer other
Hmm.
things as you get older, but if that's what you want to do. But I know other camps, especially some of the private camps, like after a certain age, like 4 weeks is your only
That's
option.
it. Right.
And so looking ahead to figure out, is that going to be within your budget so that you
Hmm.
don't go for the 2 week session for 2 years, fall in love with
Hmm.
it, and then all of a sudden it's not fit anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh, I know we hit on some of this stuff in our webinar a couple weeks ago about the price of camp, right? And figuring out how to fit it in when it doesn't fit in easily because it often
Yeah.
doesn't, right?
Yeah.
But if parents aren't already aware and thinking of overnight camp in their first summer, maybe they're looking at it closer to summer than to the last summer, right? Kind of swallowing that price that first summer can be tough.
Right. Yeah.
But, most overnight camps, they start their registration schedule in the fall, right after the camp
Yeah.
season. And so then that gives you some advanced planning where, for me, I've got like a line in my budget, in my home budget that's for camp and a little bit goes in there every month.
Yeah.
Um, but every family kind of figures
Figures it
that
out.
out in
Well,
the way that works best for them. But you're right, there are differences depending on the camp on what the opportunities are as kids get older, and sometimes that can impact the price point.
yeah.
Hmm.
I'm trying to think. So I feel like we've done some of the big picture stuff, but then there's really
Hmm.
just some nitty-gritty practical things, especially for a first-time family,
Yeah.
that they may want to check on. And I'm thinking some of these too. We talk a lot about overnight camp globally, but I know from my experiences and within the industry, not saying one's better or worse, but there are a huge difference operationally between a facility camp like ours, where we own the property and we operate it, versus like we were talking about earlier, there may be a group that goes and rents a site for a week.
Hmm.
Versus, I know my girls go with our church youth group to summer camp, and they're at a
Hmm.
university dorm room for like
Great.
4 days.
Yeah.
And then you talked about the swimming camp. I didn't have that coordination, so I ran. That was about the only thing I had talent. But same
Oh,
thing. I
running.
go.
Ugh.
It was brutal. It was brutal. But so we go across country camp, and that looked totally different. I mean, there weren't any
Hmm.
counselors. It was, hey, here you go. You're on your own.
Yeah.
Um, and so when families start looking at overnight, there may be some very practical things from safety, from communication, big picture that,
Hmm.
and in some ways, ironically, if you've had a camp experience, you may just assume that whichever of those experiences or something different is the norm. So, what are some of those questions families may want to find out ahead of time before they make assumptions?
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. So I think we're kind of at the point where like you've identified what type of camp and you've looked into some details and maybe you've identified a camp or two or three that you're like, oh, I think these are good options for us. So top of mind for me is always going to be safety. And we're going to do another call. We've added it to our schedule for next Thursday. I'll make sure the link gets out on social media and all of that, but we're going to do a specific call on safety standards. But to hit kind of high level, it's a great idea to see if the camp is accredited by any organization. And I think I should specify there are plenty of camps that aren't accredited and who have top-notch safety practices. But an accreditation gives you a little bit of assurance that they're being evaluated by an outside organization. So, looking to see if there's an
To
accreditation. Hmm.
to piggyback on that, In my experience, a lot of those camps that maybe they do 1 week the whole summer, they may not have the accreditation, but if they are hosting at an accredited camp,
Mm,
with the camp being accredited, especially by American Camp Association, I know like we both are. So when we host a group, there are certain requirements we have to put on the group that
hmm.
basically, I mean, it doesn't totally, but it brings them in a line with a lot of what we do. And
Absolutely.
so if you're looking at some of those specialty or those 1 week camps, if they're not accredited, you may, and that's important to you, you may ask if they're at an accredited site because that would bring some of that into play.
That's a good point because it does, right? As an accredited site, we have certain parameters when we're hosting outside groups. And just like you said, like we put it in our contracts that we also
Yep.
expect them to meet these standards that work in line with our accreditation. Um, some other kind of high level questions that would be easy for parents to ask is like, could you tell me about your staff to camper ratio? And that can be activities, but I'd especially ask for cabin. How many counselors are in the cabin and how many kids are in the cabin? What is your what's your staff training look like? What is your another one too for overnight camps is what do your health center operations look
Mm.
like? So
Those are
those are,
so those are so varied. I mean,
yeah.
I I visited a YMCA camp Frost Valley up in New York. They're 45 minutes from like the next gas station. So
Mm,
their health center is it's straight up hospital level. I mean
wow.
they're able to do anything sort of short of surgery.
Hmm.
Where I've seen other camps where it's like if it's going to be more than a Band-Aid or a cough drop, we're going to need to, and they usually have plans.
Oh yeah, of
That doesn't
course.
mean they're not safe. It just you need to know.
Hmm. Yeah, it's some of it is just expectation management, just
Yeah.
understanding. Um,
You
yeah, okay, so
mentioned,
hmm.
sorry, my mind's running and I've had too much coffee. You mentioned the camper to staff ratio, and I think this is less common, but you may want to find out if they have adults overnight with the kids.
Mm,
I'm thinking
hmm.
of maybe some sports camps at universities. A lot of times they're utilizing dorms, so you may not have one. Or again, I don't think it's as common, but we've run into that with one or two schools where, like, for whatever reason, their safety protocols don't allow an adult to be overnight with the child, and
Right.
that's not something we do. Our rules don't allow for that, and there's philosophical reasons. So if you run into it again, doesn't mean it's a
Hmm.
bad thing, but you need to just ask questions and make sure that their philosophy and their reasoning lines up with what you're looking for.
Yeah, and another right, like very related question, big high level question that you could ask are like, what are your child abuse prevention policies and rules?
Yeah.
Um, those are like very broad questions, but you're going to get a lot of information from the camp when you ask them.
You're reminding me of something. So we were talking about ACA and accreditation. And I know several of our staff, myself included, were visitors. So we go do accreditation
Hmm.
visits. So when I was doing the training, the guy teaching me was like, "You'll know in the first 10 minutes if they've got their stuff together."
Mm,
And I think that's true for families. When you're talking to a camp, most camps are going to have their stuff together and they're not going to be
mhm.
thrown off by questions. And they're either going to be able to give you answers or you'll get oh, let me go look into that or let me go talk to the right person. I think a red flag would be if you get a lot of, oh, that's not really an issue, or
We've
not
never run into
sure.
that before.
Never worried about that before. Yeah. And asking, I mean, you ask a handful of questions, and even more than any one answer, you'll get a sense of are they put together or are they still working on figuring it out?
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah. Um, so kind
Well,
of, oh,
I know we're going to do our safety one tomorrow, so I didn't know were there other
mhm.
big question
Yeah.
or things like that.
So I think next that comes to mind for me, which is kind of related, but not necessarily, is I'd like to encourage parents to ask this specific question, right? If you have a specific fear or a specific worry, it's
Yep.
okay to get specific with us.
Yeah.
We want to, right? And I say we as in like all of camp directors, not just not just you and I. Um, but we really want to be able to assure parents or give them the specific information that they're wanting. And sometimes, if you have a really specific worry, but you're maybe nervous to ask it, or, occasionally, occasionally, if a child struggles with something, the parent occasionally does not want to bring that up at
Yep.
first because they're worried that the camp will label their child or sometimes reject their child or whatever it might be. But I really encourage you to ask the specific question because we want to make sure you know the answer. And that is both so you can determine if we're the right place or the wrong place, right? It's
Yeah.
important all the way around. Um, if you're worried about a camp labeling or rejecting your child, you're going to know based on the answer you get when
Yeah.
you ask the question. And hopefully that is not the circumstance, right? But you're gonna know. And then even like little things like, oh my gosh, like my son is really nervous that he might have an accident during the night at camp. How do you guys manage that? He's uncomfortable speaking up, or just like zeroing in on those things that are worrying you. We want to answer those questions.
Absolutely. I mean, I've had both ways. I've had parents reach out ahead of time, and we've been able to serve kids that we wouldn't normally be able to serve. That's a weird way to
Hmm.
say it, but like we we had a plan, we were able to do it. I've had that, and we've been successful with that. But then we've had families, I'm sure it's out of that fear of not wanting their kid labeled, but they get here, it's like, this isn't within the scope of our program.
Hmm.
And maybe if we had talked about it, we could figure out how to make it work. But now we're here. And so absolutely, please share that. The other thing that kind of piggybacking what you were saying, don't be shy. I would so much rather have what feels like a pointed or an uncomfortable conversation before camp starts. You're
Hmm.
doing me a favor as camp director than having to have those questions after your child's been here
Hmm.
because we didn't have the same set of expectations.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't know if you've ever had this. This is kind of an after camp thing, but it ties in. I've had families reach out 3 or 6 or 12 months after camp with a, hey, this thing happened and it's kind of bugged me, but I
Hmm.
was scared to, I either didn't want to bring it up. We all strive to have great camps. We
Hmm.
also know that just, I mean, off of sheer numbers, we're not going to hit 100% every time. An insight for families I think is important. It is so much easier for me as a camp director if I find out about an issue 1 or 2 days after. I can still go talk to staff. I can still figure out what went on. Where once summer's over, and then for sure after Christmas is past,
Hmm.
I'm going to empathize. I'm going to
Hard.
try to figure out an answer, but I'm not going to be able to determine near as much or be able to help give you answers. So don't be
Mhm.
shy before or after. Please reach out.
Yeah, we do. We want to know if something isn't hasn't gone right. We
Yeah.
we want to know.
Yeah.
Um, and okay, so a few other questions. I feel like
Yeah.
I get a lot of questions about communication, right? Like, how will I know my child? Like, how will I know how they're doing? Can I talk to my child while they're at camp? You know, how do I know if there's, especially right when we're talking about this year after everything that happened at Camp Mystic,
Yeah,
last year, right? How do I know if there's an emergency at camp? And so, thinking through for yourself, are there specific communication needs you want or clarifications you want? Those are great questions to ask camps as you're kind of weeding through them.
absolutely. I think some open-ended questions give you just may unearth some of those things that you don't even know what to ask, right?
Yeah.
So asking the camp director, like, what have I not asked you about? Or
Hmm.
what's something that you wish your that families knew about your camp?
Hmm.
And ask him what the retention is, or like why do families keep coming back? I know some camps even have either a formal program or informal, where if you ask, like, "Hey, could you put me in touch with a few families?" Now, bear in mind, we're going to put you
Yes.
in touch with our raving fans. They're going to tell you great things,
That's
but
true. We will. Yeah.
it is but there's still value. It's another
Hmm.
parent who's had a real experience and can talk to you as a parent who's made that choice to go to that camp. And so
Hmm.
asking to be put in touch with those families is another option that you could find out about.
Yeah. Okay. So I feel like this is the perfect segue into, right? We're going to back it up a little. How do you even search for camps? How do you even find them? And my first recommendation is always ask your friends, right? And especially the friends of yours that hold similar values, whose kids have similar interests, right? Your kids like to play together, right? Like those types of friends, ask them if there's a camp they go to or would recommend. And similar to what you were saying, if you don't have a close friend that knows an overnight camp or goes to one, a lot of camps travel, especially in the fall and in the winter, to different cities to do a home show or a get together. And a lot of times those camps will post those opportunities on their website or on their Instagram, Facebook pages. And generally, there's an invitation for new camper or prospective camper families to attend, but also an invitation for current families to attend. And so that's a really cool chance where you can talk to one of the camp directors, learn about the program face to face, but you also have the chance to meet another family, and maybe your child has a chance to meet someone they could go to camp with. So
Yeah,
that's a really cool opportunity when you're searching around.
absolutely. Along those lines, I mean, and again, I think what all these keep coming back to is look around, right? Look what circles are you already in? So does your church have a camp that they go to or a tie to? Are you a member of the YMCA? They probably either have a camp or a partnership with an association that has one.
Hmm.
And then we talked about some of the other different affiliations. And then, I mean, internet has tons of information. My
Yes.
favorite way to find a good camp is if you just type in campharrison.org or campthunderbird.org. That usually
Highly
pulls up.
recommend.
Yeah, that
Yes.
gets it for you. Um, if that doesn't work, I guess you could go to Google and you could try searching summer camps.
Hmm.
ACA has a listing.
ACA,
I
for
will.
anyone who doesn't know, is American Camp Association.
I will say I think I've done a bad job. I can't remember the last time I've updated my ACA information for
You know,
Harrison.
ours, I just saw this week, and our moderator who's on, Liz Lewis, got them updated for us like just this
Thank you,
week. So,
Liz.
hmm.
So I throw that out there. It's a good starting point, but a lot of camps, we're just like families. We're doing a lot of stuff, and I know
Hmm.
that there's camps that have put that up 10 years ago. So maybe use it to look for names, but I wouldn't worry too much about the information. You may want to reach out to the camp.
You don't want to
Um, yeah,
the sole way that you look at a camp.
so
Yeah.
wait, yeah, yeah. But there's lots of good ways to look that up, and um, I'd even in some ways I think it's almost like looking for a college. Like start broad. You may not send your kid to a camp in Colorado, but
Hmm.
looking at some that are out there, you may see. a program or a philosophy or something that speaks to you that now you know, okay, and you can probably find something like that closer to home. So I'd say
Hmm.
don't be scared to start broad and look at things that maybe are out of your budget or um, maybe don't do that with your child sitting next to you. But you know, look big, look broad, and look for themes, look for things that get you excited, and then you could
Hmm.
probably find a version of that that fits those logistical needs.
That's good advice. Um, okay, I think I want to mention one other thing, and then maybe we can see if there are any questions. But
Yeah.
something that just came up, and you've hit on it a little bit throughout the call about how like sometimes it isn't the right fit. And so I just want to offer some assurance to anybody who's really scared of making the wrong choice for the overnight camp for their kid, right? Big picture, right? You try one, it's not the best. Try a different one the next time. I
Yeah.
was at a conference I went to a few weeks ago. One of the keynotes was talking about how like she landed as a kid. She went to a camp, it landed, it was hers for the rest of her life. She's got twin boys now, and it's taken them a few years to find the one. Um, but aside from kind of that big picture, because I'm a mom, right, when you think about what if I make the wrong choice and my kid is unhappy the whole time, right? Like, that's such a, like, it hits your gut when you think about that. And the assurance I want to offer is you know your child best, and there is an excellent chance you're going to make a great choice for them. If if you land in that really small margin and it's not a great fit for your child, and maybe they don't have a fun time when they're away at camp, A, we, and I say this collectively, right? And I'll say, I'll even specify with a reputable camp. Our staff are trained to embrace campers who even aren't, the ones loving it. And they are trained to help kids cope with homesickness, or other things that come up when they're at camp. And camp is a really nurturing place to have that experience, right? That doesn't mean it's all happy, that doesn't mean it's all comfortable. But if there's a place to experience homesickness, to experience just like I'm not in the like this isn't it's not my
This isn't
thing.
me. Yeah.
Um, Camp is such a nurturing place to have
Yeah.
that experience, and there is personal growth that comes with that. So I just want to offer some assurance that even if you don't make the
It,
right choice, it's going to be okay.
oh yeah. And to something you mentioned, just that pressure that parents can feel. It in the odd chance it happens, they don't have a great time. It may not even been the decision you made. We see that happen, right? Sometimes it's personalities within the cabin.
Hmm.
Sometimes I've had great counselors who a kid just doesn't mesh
Hmm.
with. It's everybody's favorite counselor except this kid's
Hmm.
because it did not work. And so there's
Yeah.
factors outside of a parent's control of what comes together. Another hack I know a lot of families have used along those lines of finding the right fit is especially if you're looking early, like a year ahead of time. A lot of camps offer a family camp or a mom and me or some opportunity for you and your child to come to camp together and do a
Hmm.
program, even overnight or for a weekend. It's not going to be the same. It's not, you're not getting the same summer experience because you don't have the cabin counselors, but getting a feel and getting an idea where the place is and the kids starting to get excited and feel it. For some of our families, that's been a great way to kind of find their way through.
Yeah, I love that.
Well, I
Okay.
think we've gone through a ton of information.
Hmm.
We can open up to questions, and then while we're waiting, did you want to highlight a little bit of what our plans are for our bonus talk next week?
Yes, bonus webinar episode.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So we had some requests and brilliant requests to talk a little more specifically about safety standards. And so we'll be hosting a call same time next week, Thursday at 7 o'clock. We'll make sure to record it. And we will talk all safety aspects of camp and things to look for, questions to ask, um, and we'll hit everything from child abuse prevention to first aid and CPR to equipment inspections, right? We'll kind of cover the whole bucket, and certainly be available for any questions that parents have too.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be a lot of fun, and
Hmm.
I think it'll be. I know a lot of we always that's the pet peeve of every camp director, right? What do you do the other 9 months? Um, a lot of it is that prep and the inspections and the trainings, and there's a lot that goes into it. So it'll be fun kind of pulling the curtain back and sharing that with folks.
I agree. Yeah, I think it'll hopefully provide some good insight and help parents feel confident and comfortable in what to expect and what to look for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like we either did a great job, or we've just worn everyone out. I don't know that we've got any questions coming in, but this has been fun. Enjoyed
Agreed.
spending some time with you, and looking
Always.
forward to our call next week. It'll be another good one.
That sounds great. Have a good night, Landry.
Awesome. You too, Crystal. See you
Bye,
later.
everybody.
Bye, everyone. See ya.